All right, let's just jump right in. Welcome to this explainer, where we're tackling one of the most complex, absolutely vital, and frankly, miraculous tools we have as human beings: language. Think about it. Every single day, you and I produce this endless stream of sounds just to share ideas, build our communities, and really express who we are. But how often do we actually stop and look at the mechanics of what we're doing? Well, today we're going to do exactly that. We're going to break down the actual science of language and figure out exactly how this incredible system works.
So here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We're starting with the mystery of origins, then we'll define the science itself, dissect the micro level, build up the macro level, look at applied linguistics in action, and finally, wrap up with the true value of language.
Okay, part 1, the mystery of origins. Let's talk about where this all started. Now, before we can even look at how language works today, we have to tackle a huge question about yesterday. We use language so effortlessly, like you are effortlessly processing my words right this very second without even breaking a sweat. Yet, scientifically speaking, we are facing a massive paradox about how it actually began. How did early humans make that massive leap from basic, animalistic grunts to a fully structured, rule-governed system of infinite expression?
And right away, we hit a wall. There is absolutely no universally accepted explanation for the origin of human language. Why? Because spoken language leaves exactly zero fossil record. Anthropologists can dig up ancient bones or tools or pieces of pottery, but they obviously can't dig up an ancient conversation. So without that physical evidence, linguists and historians have had to basically reverse engineer its inception using a variety of theories. To fill in that massive gap, early thinkers came up with some, honestly, hilariously named origin theories. Take the bow wow theory, for example. It basically argues that early humans just mimicked the natural world. Hearing a dog bark and imitating that sound to identify the animal. Then you've got the poo-poo theory, which suggests that sudden emotional outbursts like a gasp of pain or a sigh of relief became our very first words. Or the yo-hey-ho theory, which proposes that language actually grew out of the rhythmic, coordinated chants of early humans doing heavy physical labor. Now sure, the names might sound a bit silly to our modern ears, but they represent very real historical attempts to pin down the actual catalyst of human speech. Was it imitation, emotion, labor, or, as the evolutionary theory suggests, was it just a gradual biological development of the human brain? Moving on to part 2, defining the science. Let's separate the phenomenon from the science.
So, moving past those historical origin stories, we really need to define how we investigate this today. We have to draw a hard line between language and linguistics. Language is the phenomenon itself. It's the organic, messy communication system we use out in the real world every single day. It's the tool. Linguistics, on the other hand, is the science. It's the rigorous, methodical study of that tool. Linguists are the scientists putting this tool under a microscope to figure out exactly how sounds, grammar, meaning, and societal influence all interact. And this whole scientific pursuit didn't just pop up overnight. We can actually trace its evolution, starting from early philosophical foundations laid down in ancient India by scholars like Panini, and in ancient Greece, right through the Roman period's grammatical categorizations. Then we fast forward to comparative linguistics, where scholars started tracking huge language families, and straight into the 20th century with structuralism, generative grammar, and ultimately the highly integrated, computational modern linguistics we rely on today. When we look at our modern historical architects, two completely distinct viewpoints emerge. On one side, we have Ferdinand de Saussure, widely known as the father of modern linguistics. He brought us structuralism, brilliantly differentiating between lang, which is the abstract, invisible rulebook in our heads, and parole, which is the physical, actual act of speaking. On the flip side, we have Noam Chomsky, the cognitive pioneer. He totally revolutionized the field with generative grammar, proposing the language acquisition device. Chomsky essentially shifted the entire paradigm, arguing that humans actually have an innate, hardwired biological capacity to learn and generate language.
All right, part 3, dissecting the micro level. Let's trace this from sounds all the way to words.
Now that we've got our historical foundations set, let's zoom all the way in to the smallest, most foundational elements of communication. Try to think of linguistics not as just a random grab bag of topics, but as a very strict hierarchy of complexity. We start right at the absolute center, the literal physical sounds we make, and we slowly zoom out, layer by layer, all the way to the social impact of a full conversation.
This micro-level operates in 3 super precise steps. Step 1 is phonetics. This is the raw physics of speech, literally how your lungs, vocal cords, and tongue physically move to produce a sound.
Step 2 is phonology. This looks at how those raw sounds form mental patterns that change meaning. Like understanding how just swapping a P sound for a B sound totally changes the word pin into bin. And then step 3 is morphology, the study of word formation. It's how we take root words and snap on prefixes and suffixes, like taking the word happy, adding un and ness, and putting them together like puzzle pieces to build the word unhappiness.
Which brings us to part 4, building the macro level, going from sentences to actual meaning.
So we have the building blocks, now we have to assemble them into the complex ideas we actually share every day. Up at the macro level, we have two massive pillars, syntax and semantics. Syntax is all about the rigid structural rules. It's the invisible force that tells us the student answered the question works perfectly, but answered student the question is totally broken. Semantics, meanwhile, focuses on literal meaning. It's the branch that helps you realize the difference between a financial bank, where you keep your money, and the muddy bank of a river, just based on the dictionary definitions of the words themselves.
But here is where it gets really fun. The outer ring of this hierarchy is pragmatics. This is the contextual pivot point where all those rigid rules suddenly bend to human intent. Basically, meaning doesn't just rely on dictionary definitions. It relies on the environment and what the speaker actually wants. Take a simple phrase like, "It's cold here." If you're staring at a thermometer, you're just making an observation. If you're shivering in a drafty room, it's a complaint. But if you look pointedly at a friend standing next to an open window and say, "It's cold here," you're not making an observation. You are politely demanding they close that window. That is pragmatics in action. Part 5. Applied linguistics in action. How do we actually use this stuff?
So you might be wondering, how do we take all these incredibly detailed micro and macro theories and apply them out in the real world? Why does this matter outside a laboratory? Well, beyond those core building blocks, the science of linguistics expands into some incredibly diverse applied fields. Sociolinguistics examines how our accents, dialects, and social class markers interact with society. Psycholinguistics looks inward at how the physical brain actually processes and stores speech. Historical linguistics traces the fascinating ways language shifts over generations. And today, one of the most explosive fields is computational linguistics. This is where we take all those rules of syntax, semantics, and morphology and use them to program AI. It's the exact science powering the machine translation and speech recognition running on the smartphone in your pocket right now.
Finally, Part 6, the value of language, the human element. Let's look at how all this scientific dissection actually builds into something profoundly personal for every single one of us. When we zoom out to the widest possible lens, way past the syntax trees and the phonetics, we find the human element. We realize that linguistics isn't just about memorizing arbitrary grammar rules. It's the study of the fundamental architecture that literally connects our species. Language is the vessel that preserves our diverse cultures across centuries. It shapes the invisible societal structures we live within, and ultimately, it is the primary tool you and I use to express exactly who we are to the rest of the world.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Based on everything we've looked at today, from the mysterious origins of those very first words, all the way to the complex macro structures we use to form sentences, how do the specific words, the accent, and the linguistic structures that you choose to use every single day actively shape your own unique reality and identity? Think about it. The science of language is, at the end of the day, the science of you. Thanks so much for diving into this with me.